Okay. Today we're going to start on the very top of Mem Daled, 44a. First words. Okay, we thank Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day. Listen about learning, we should have the base of Mikdash immediately. Learning Lula Nishmas, Tzav Goldavas Baruch Binyamin, and Psalms of Ben Benzin, and also our first name of Tav and David Ben Sarah, and Gedali Getzel, Elias Ben Fagit Sarah. Wait. Okay, so this Gemara is the story of Reuven, Shimon, Levi, and Yehuda. I don't know if you remember from yesterday. Shimon was an original owner. Reuven stole a field from Shimon, and he sold it to Levi. Comes along Yehuda. Yehuda's the Ma'arer. He is the so if we have like disputed the people here, I would have Shimon would be called the Marakama. Reuven would be called the Gazlan and the Meicher, right? He's the thief and the seller. And then like Levi is the Lekeach, he's the innocent one here. Kleiner. And Yehuda is the Ma'arer. It's coming to the test. And what we were learning was that Shimon, who's the Marakama, the original owner, is not allowed to testify on behalf of Levi that it should stay by the Lekeach, that it stay by the purchaser, because he's biased. Because he would want that he actually wants that it belongs to Levi. He feels he'll be able to get it from Levi better. So okay, we had a contrast between if it was a house or a field or versus metaltalin. We said if it's a house or a field, then he's not allowed to testify. If it's metaltalin, if it's movable personality, then he is allowed to testify. Okay. We had a question on the Gemara before that okay, the questions on the Gemara before are not so significant. The Gemara now starts, look me begazlan. Why do we need to say that the reason why Shimon isn't allowed to testify on behalf of Levi is because he's biased, because he wants it to stay by Levi? What was the real bias that we had? Because the notion can go after. Because did we mention that? Did we say because of that there's going to be it was given to a Balchayt? They can get it from Shimon will be able to yeah, what was his bias? Because Shimon will be able to because he'll be able to get it out of Levi. He'll be able to get it out of Levi easier than he'll get it out of Yehuda. So the Gemara asked, why doesn't he the same proof that'll get it from Yehuda he can use to get it from the same proof he can use to get it from Levi, he can get it from Yehuda. So he said, no, it's not so simple, because Yehuda has witnesses and or not, or maybe the Gemara finished, or maybe, yeah, that was the last answer, or maybe just Yehuda's too strong. He's litigious.
Please, I have to write these names down to keep it straight. Could you quickly review who's who again?
Yeah, so Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, right?
Right.
Reuven is the thief.
He's the thief.
And he's also a seller.
Okay.
With an S. Then Shimon is the original owner. And he's now trying to be a witness.
Okay.
Levi is the purchaser.
Lekeach.
The Lekeach. And Yehuda is the Ma'arer. He's the one that's coming to contest.
And
Shimon would be testifying on behalf of Levi against Yehuda.
where does Yehuda get the basis to protest? Is he claiming he really is the owner, or?
Yeah, that Shimon was not the owner. It's
So
really
he's-
the real case here is it's Yehuda versus Shimon, but there happens to be a Gazlan and a Lekeach in here.
Okay.
So now all of this, by the way, is coming to explain a brisa that says that if he sells him a house, he can't testify for him. And we said, what are you talking about? We said, oh, there's this whole complication, and this is Reb Sheshes that gave us this whole story of this. The Gemara asks, why does Reb Sheshes, right now, this is where we're holding on the top of Memdal, why does the Gemara need to give me this complicated story of Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda? And Shimon can't testify on behalf of Levi because he's biased, because he wants to get into Levi's hands so he can extract it from Levi. What do we need Levi here? Just have a Reuven. You hear the question? Just have a Reuven. Shimon wants to testify that it belongs to the Gazlan, to the guy that stole it from him. And he's not allowed to do that because he wants to get it. It's easier for him to get it out of Reuven than it is to get it out of Yehuda. Why do we need this extra story of that it got sold? What's our point? Our point is that the original owner has a bias.
One of the reasons why we mentioned it sold is so he could become an owner.
Who could become an owner? It's Shimon testifying against Yehuda. And
so Levi could become the owner.
No, but drop Levi. Just say Reuven. Reuven is the Gazlan. He stole the field. Why do you need that extra step?
Because we learned before that if one of them gave up and with the change of possession, it would work.
Okay, and how does that affect the Hillel's answering, which the Gemara is actually going to mention later, that there's a concept called Yush and Shiner Rishus, that if you give up hope and then it changes possession, then it could become his. But how does that change anything?
That if it wouldn't have been sold,
Good guess.
Oh, yeah,
If it wouldn't have been sold, then it wouldn't have kicked in. But our whole point over here is the bias, right? Our whole point is he biased or is he not biased? Yeah. Okay. So no, you have a point. Just the Gemara has to spell that out. We'll see in a moment. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Like you're gonna presume that the thief is an easier person to deal with, the Gazlan? It's probably the hardest person to deal with.
However, he feels that no, the thief maybe is easy for him to prove it. The other guy is not so easy to prove it. You know, the thief is an absolute thief. Thinks the court's going to see that. Maybe,
the thief might give up litigating quicker because it didn't cost him anything. The other guy actually bought the thing from the thief, so he's going to contest until the end.
Hill is saying that maybe the thief gives up easy because he'll try to steal another property. Yeah. Okay, didn't work. You have to steal a bunch till you get one.
For two? What are the odds?
Okay. So the question is, why do we need Levi in here? That's the first words of the Gemara. Look begazlan. Let us establish the whole case with just Reuven. My answer is Mishum the Kabayim lemisnei seifa. Because we have to say, do you remember there was a contrast in the brisa? This is all Rav Sheshes putting these words into the brisa, putting the scenario to the brisa. But the contrast was the difference between property versus personality, realty versus personalty. Seifa says, machalei para machalei talis. If he sold him a cow, if he sold him a talis, the dafka machar, the havala yish v'shinu rishus. You see, it has to be, when are you allowed to testify on behalf? You see, if you can't testify, then the bias is there. Then the bias doesn't matter. It's only in the other case, in the reverse case, if it was personality where the halach is where he is allowed to testify, then he would only allowed to be able to testify if it's yish and shinu rishus. Yish means that the original owner gave up hope, and then there was the actual change of hands, change of possession. And so what happens then? It says if there's Yish and Shinur Rishus, so then it would be like this. Let's say Shimon testifies on behalf of Levi that it belongs to Levi. Now, we had a problem with Shimon doing that because he really is testifying that because he wants to extract it from Levi. But if there's Yish and Shinur Rishus, he can't extract it from Levi. So then he should be allowed to testify because he has no gain from it. You follow? Yeah.
How would you extract it?
He would say that now that it's not Yehuda's, now let me tell you that it's really mine.
Maybe as like a game or something.
No, Levi just purchased it from Reuven, and Reuven stole it from Shimon. And Shimon testifies that it's not Yehuda's, that it belongs to Levi. Now he goes to Levi and he says, it's not, I know it's not Yehuda's, but it's not yours either, it's really mine.
Then you just completely switched the case.
Yeah.
He wasn't.
Yeah, that was the question. How was he allowed to switch? So he said he didn't actually say that it's Levi's, he just said that it wasn't Yehuda's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So Avaloi Machar, but if Reuven would not have sold this to Levi, then the Hadrale, like, because let's say it was just Reuven. So in this case, in this opposite case, let's say it was just Reuven, and Shimon would be testifying that it belongs to Reuven. So then Reuven would then go back. He wants to, then he could go and take it away from Reuven. Shimon testifies that it belongs to Reuven. Then afterwards, even if Shimon had given up hope, but because there was no change of hands, which is still in the hands of the original thief, so then Shimon would be able to extract it. So that would be a bias right there. It's only after Reuven sold it that Shimon becomes not biased. It's because of that contrast, that case. The Gemara now asks, so okay, so Tanar Reisha Nami Mecher. So that's why we have a case of Reuven, Shimon, Levi, and Yehuda, because we need to say the contrast. We need to have the other case. The Gemara says, "V'seifa nami he need miyayish migufei midamem miyayish." 1 second. When it comes to Yish and Shinu Rishus, when it comes to a thief taking something, where you don't get the actual item back, but you still get the money back, you still get the value back. So although he's not biased and he's able to testify, he should be able to testify because he's not going to be able to get the actual item back. But what about the value of it? The person still owes him the value. So when he testifies that it belongs to Levi, or that it doesn't belong to Yehuda, he's then going to go to Levi and he's going to take it back. So the L'chari should be biased. The whole way that we were explaining this was because he's not biased, because he doesn't get anything returned to him. He doesn't get the actual item returned to him, but he should get the value returned to him. The Gemara answers, Leitzricha demis Gazlan, talking about where Reuven died. And the rule is that if someone stole and then he died, so if you can't get back the original item, then you can't get back the value either. It's only the original item that you can get back from the Yarshim, from the inheritors. As it's taught in the Mishnah, the Tanan, someone steals and then he feeds it to his children, or he leaves it for them, and he passes away, then Petur Shalem, they're exempt from paying. Now, there is a discussion in that Mishnah, it's the end of Baba Kama. There's a discussion in that Mishnah. If we're talking about where the actual item is existing and the actual item is not existing, whatever the case is, it says that they're exempt from paying. Okay, so what's our story? Our story now is we have a Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, and Reuven passed away, and he has children, Yisachar and Zvulun, let's say, that we don't have to pay. Yeah, they don't have to. We try to get them you can't take the item out of Levi, but you can get the original money from Reuven. Problem is Reuven died and he has his children, and that you can't collect from them. Okay, so now there's no bias, right?
You said unless there was the item.
Well, if the item is still there, that's going to be a complication. But we're talking about where if the item changed hands,
To Levi.
to Levi, then this Yish and Shinur Shus, you can't get the original item. What about the value? You can collect from Reuven the value. So for that, we said that Reuven passed away. Or a change to the item would be the same. Yeah, you can't get it back if it's Shinoi. Shinur Shus or an actual change. Very good. Memory. That's the whole Masechta ago. It's the whole Bab Metzia. You have to jump back to Baba Kama. So it says Velukne b'Yirish. The Gemara says 1 second. Now you've added in people into the story, but you didn't really need to do this because you told me that there's a story of a Lekeach. There's a Levi over here that purchased it from Reuven, that purchased it from the Ganav. But you're also telling me that Reuven passed away and that there's Reuven's Yarshim, Yisachar and Zvulun, let's say, that they don't have to pay. Why do we need a Lekeach now? Why don't we just have Levi to be the son of Reuven, and Reuven dies, and we're saying that you can't extract it from Levi because there's an exchange of hands from Reuven to Levi. Why does Reuven have to sell it? If you're anyway saying that Reuven died, just say that Levi was the inheritor. V'lukme b'Yirish. Why don't we teach that Brisa? Why doesn't the Brisa say not that he sold it? The Brisa should say that he was Hirish. It says Hanich Lamandam. We can answer this quite easily because according to one opinion, Hanich Lamandam Rishus Yirish Lafker Shus Lekech Dami. There is an opinion that says that an inheritor is not considered a purchaser. Inheritor actually just steps into the feet, to the shoes of the deceased. And so it's not like it changed hands. That's a great answer, right? That would answer the whole question. Why do we have to say that there was a sale? Because we needed a case where it changed hands, so he can't get the original item back. So he's not biased, so he can testify. And if it's just dealing with Levi as an inheritor, not as a purchaser, then Levi would not be the one that didn't exchange hands to him, because it's still Levi just replaces Reuven.
About gift property, still allowed him to give it to.
Oh, when it comes to actual property, it's a good point. Jonathan's asking, what about if it's a exchange of hands by property? The answer is that property is not really stolen. So property is always by the original owner. So we don't consider it changing hands because the property is just like you don't really take possession of it. It's just, you like walk into it without permission, but it doesn't really change hands the way that personal teaching. That's the contrast over here. The property is never going to change hands. It's never going to be stolen. So he's always going to be biased. He's always going to be able to, Shimon will always be able to get back his original property, depending on how he testifies. If he testifies for him, testifies for him. So there's always going to be a bias by property.
That is the same even if the neighbor falls.
What do you mean? Property is never stolen. It means if he's able to prove that it's his, we're not going to be able to say that, oh no, you gave up hope. It was in the hands of another person. You can't get it back. We don't say that by property. Yeah.
By property means like
Realty.
animal.
Realty.
I was wondering, since you mentioned that between the father and the son, like a different man, was that like one of the reasons why before we said that the continuous father and son?
We didn't use that because we said it would work by a lekech as well if they had a document. We didn't use that logic.
I was wondering
because I would limit it only to that one opinion. We didn't use that logic. Okay. Ella, the problem is, but however, that only answers one side. It doesn't answer the whole thing. We still have a question. We know that there's a machlekes regarding if Rishus Yerush or Rishus Lekeach. if the inheritor is considered like a purchaser. So according to the opinion that holds that inheritor is like a purchaser, which would mean that if someone stole an item and then he passed away, and it goes to the inheritor, if the original owner had given up hope, then the two criteria that would make the object acquired to the new person takes effect. Criteria number one is yush, he gave up hope. Criteria number two is that it exchanged hands. So if that's the case, then why do we need to say that it exchanged hands through a purchase? You just say it exchanged hands through bequeathing it from Reuven to Levi. Levi's the son now. Why do we need to say that it was sold? That's one question. Yeah, I'm sorry.
So if this case, this subject matter here doesn't include realty, it has to be about metaltalin.
Right.
And is it metaltalin that has an achrayas on it?
Is there an achrayas? Usually there's no achrayas on it.
Right, so there's no achrayas on it.
Yeah.
It's metaltalin, but there's a tikkun shuk that there's no achrayas on metaltalin.
Yeah. Now, usually achrayas on metaltalin is usually done differently. You see, usually achrayas is used when the seller had a debt.
So it had a debt, yeah.
Creditor comes in and confiscates from the purchaser
Right.
items or property that was belonging to the debtor.
Yeah, you're guaranteeing you have you really
Yeah.
truly own it and you have the ability to sell it, and it turns out you didn't.
Right. But if the seller was a thief
The seller
and it
was,
wasn't even his to sell, then that's not a concept of achrayas. That's there was never a sale there. You just go back and get your money. It said, "Well, you sold me something." Yeah. So achrayas is really when you own it. When you own it and you sold it, but then there was a problem because there was a lien on the property. That was a valid sale. It just, you needed a guarantee because of what happened.
Mhm.
When it comes to a thief, the thief, then there was never a sale there. Should be able to go back and get all his money back. Okay, there's another point over here. If you go back to the original wording of the brisa, it really didn't fit in. There's a problem over here. If the brisa on one page back, there's Taner Rabbanan, machalei bias machalei sad. If he sold him a house or he sold him a field, ein meid loyalei, you can't testify for him. Because he has responsibility. Now, Reish Lakish came in and said, "Oh, you know what we're talking about? Talking about Shimon testifying for Levi because why can't he testify? Because he's going to return to him and somehow claim it back from Reuven." And 1 second, that's not the issue. The issue is because Shimon's going to get the property back. That's the issue. The whole term is wrong. We thought that's when it comes to a buyer and a seller. But here we're talking about an original owner, a thief, and who sold it, and then the purchaser, and we're using the term achrayas. That's not the issue. If we're worried about a bias that Shimon has, that bias is that he's going to get it back, not that he's going to be responsible to pay for it. So Abaye is questioning Rav Shes's whole interpretation here, that it doesn't fit. Gemara says, Ella, rather, because of these two problems, why did we need a lekeach? We could have said the same halacha with the Yerush. Why are we saying mitnei shachar yusei alav? It should have said mitnei shachazeres lai, right? Because Shimon will get it back. That we retract from that. We retract from our pshat in Rav Sheshes. We say Ela kid the Rav and Bar Shmuel. Rather, we're going to learn it the way Rav and Bar Shmuel taught it. And the case of Rav and Bar Shmuel and which we had. Go back.
That's a rest.
Mem Gimel. Yeah. The Rabban Bar Shmuel, Dam Rabban Bar Shmuel, Mishmei de Shmuel. Yeah, Moshe pointed out. That's where we saw that Shmuel had a son. Hamoicher Sada Lachaveirei. If someone sells a property to his friend Shaleba Achrayas without taking responsibility for it, Ein Meyed Lai, he can't testify. Ein Meyed Lai, he's not allowed to testify for the purchaser. Because when he does that, he's actually biased. There's actually a bias here because he wants that his creditor is going to be able to extract it from the purchaser. You see, here we have a similar case. We have a case where Ruvain owes money, and he sells it. The property, Ruvain has a property. He owes money, and he sells the property to Shimon. And Yehuda comes to say that the property is not Ruvain's, the property is really mine. So Ruvain's not allowed to testify on behalf of Shimon that it really belongs to Shimon. Yehuda's trying to take it away because his creditor, Ruvain's creditor, is coming in to take the property, and he wants it to be by Shimon because he wants to be able to pay up his debt with that property. Right. And it's Leiva Rush of Leishalim. He doesn't want to be in the category of someone that doesn't pay his debts. He doesn't mind if the sale is canceled. I mean, not sale's canceled. He doesn't mind if the property gets taken away from Shimon and he's not he sold something without integrity, because it was like a fake sale. That he's not worried about. He just wants to pay up his debts. He doesn't want to be a Leiva Rush of Leishalim. He doesn't want to be someone that doesn't pay. It's not good for his credit score. Mm-hmm. So, but somehow this sale, that's okay. The guy lost it. Okay, it's his fault. People are more concerned about their credit to pay their.
No, they have different types of fees.
Uh-huh.
When the property is sold at an auction, like a special fee, then that's like limited. It could have things that in fact are still old.
Uh-huh.
The best one is like the warranty.
A warranty deed, and that's
that was like pretty good.
Uh-huh. And you can do that by an auction also.
No, usually they'll do a special.
Uh-huh. That's the concept of an auction. You don't really know what you're getting. Do that with the
Persons cover the cat in the bag.
So now we say, but this is only by a property because the concern over here is that the extracting of the collection of a debt can only be done from a property. And so that's why the Bryce had a contrast between if he sold him a property, he's not allowed to testify on the purchaser's behalf that it belongs to him because he wants the creditor to come in and collect it. But if he sold a metaltalin, if he sold him personal to a cow or a talus, he is allowed to testify because there's no creditor that can come in and take it. Now the Gemara explains. Not only if this was done without anything specific, in other words, the cow and the talus were on top of them, were not specifically designated for the collection of the debt. That the cow, that the regular personality is never mortgaged towards a loan. My time a metaltalin, because that's considered metaltali, it's personality. Metaltal balchayv lemishtabdi, and personality is not mortgaged to the loan. The cost of lay, even though the document that says miklimad al kaspe, when he writes the promissory note, he says that you can collect even from the shirt off my back. That's the expression that's used. So you see that metaltalin is personality is a mortgage to the loan. He says, yeah, but that's hanimilu disnu beinayo. That's only if the original owner is still holding on to it. You can collect it from the original owner if he still has it. Abalesnu beinayo, but if he sold it already, then it's not mortgage to the loan. Once it's sold, people can't keep track of everything that they purchase to make sure that the guy doesn't have a loan. You only do that for realty, to make sure he doesn't have any mortgages. But if you go to the marketplace and you buy someone's vase, you buy a vase, a watch, a tie, something, a pair of shoes, you cannot be concerned that there's going to be a creditor that's going to come in and take away your shoes away, because you bought the guy's shoes. The whole business, the whole market would close down. It would be impossible to survive like that. So with the way it was set up is that when it comes to creditors coming in to collect, they can only collect from realty that was sold. And then we have this whole thing, title insurance. Yeah, you gotta check that out. So that's why we have this contrast that there's really no bias if he's sold what is that? Oh, a car. There's
Yeah, like other personal.
They can assess everything.
Even if
Yeah,
you
I'm talking about civil.
no, but even if you sold the car already,
Depends who's coming out. If it's the IRS, they have.
no, 1 second. If you owe money even to the IRS, and then you sold the car, will they go to the person that bought the car?
No. They'll come to the person that sold the car. Like, oh, you sold that car. Where's the money for the car?
Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
but the
because-
car itself,
but that's
No.
that's
car
because
sold.
they're going to take from all of your. If you
Yeah,
have money,
yes,
they'll take that.
Yeah, they're gonna come out.
But they can't take it from the purchaser of
No,
the
no,
car.
no.
Okay.
Unless,
Okay. Over here, we're talking about where you can theoretically you could go to the purchaser and say you bought an item. So it works out the same.
Oh.
With fraud, they have that called clawback.
maybe they might.
What is that?
With fraud, like it's called clawback, like Madoff. They went back to the people that Madoff had paid, from the investments, and they said, you knew or whatever, like Madoff was a fraud. We're taking you're not going to profit off of all the people that lost their money with Madoff. We're taking back the money that you gained also.
Now, I don't know the details, but I just want to ask this question: is that Madoff's metaltalin that were moved around and they're taking it from those personal items? They're extracting it from purchasers.
Yeah, cash. Yeah.
Okay, it's cash.
That depends. If you're a politic, they don't take anything back. It just happened with the same thing. He gave hundreds of thousands of dollars to all these politics, and none of them give back a penny. However, the investors that made money, they have to give the money back. So
So there's a lot of corruption here. Yeah, I'm hearing. even in the system, there's corruption. Okay, so even in the correction system, there's correct, the whole thing. Okay, so Ella, but even even if you did what you told me, those English or Spanish word, apoteke or something. So even if it's an apoteke is a compound word in Aramaic, apoite, that from this it's standing. In other words, you'll collect. So even if the person said that when he borrowed the money, he said, well, how are you going to pay me back? He says, well, listen, I have a cow that has some value. You'll collect from that cow. Apoite, you'll collect from this cow.
Collateral or lien property.
happens with the car.
Right, you can do it with the car. They have the car. So even if you made it into a paitaki, but still, you still can't collect from it. My timer, the Rava, like Rava says, if you made your slave into an apaitake, that means that even though his slave is movable, but then you said that you told the one that lent you the money that you can collect from the slave, then even if it's sold, you can actually collect from it. My time, however, but if he says his ox or his donkey is an apaitake, then and he sold it, even if it's a apaitake, you still can't collect from personality. It's only if you're still holding on to it. And what's the reason for that distinction? Because because of that problem that we mentioned before, that people can't keep track of everything that they purchase, be able to start looking into if the person has a creditor. Even if there's personality is not acquired with documents.
What the slave is.
Slave is. Yeah. Okay, now the Gemara has an interesting question. Basically, what we're saying over here is that when it comes to personality, you have zero concern about Shimon being biased when he testifies on behalf well, Levi was the other case where it was a stolen. Now we're talking about where it was just sold. The field was just sold. There's no thief here. Right? We dropped the story with the thief. Here we're just talking about a sale. And now he wants to testify on behalf of the purchaser. And we're saying that he can't testify on behalf of the purchaser because maybe he wants it to be the purchaser's so that the creditor can extract it from the purchaser. That's our new story, Ravin Bar Shmuel. Now, that's only when it comes to realty. When it comes to personalty, you don't have a concern because the creditor can't get it away from the purchaser anyway. Yeah. No, we're dropping Reuven. Shimon sells it to Levi. Yehuda's coming to say that it's his, and Shimon's not allowed to testify to Levi on behalf of Levi. So the Gemara says, 1 second. There's a theoretical possibility that maybe Shimon transferred to the creditor the possession of the personalty that he sold to Levi. In order for him to collect, he says, if I don't have money, then you should take these items and I'm giving them to you now together with this property. In other words, how did he transfer the items over to the creditor? Because Shimon had a property, and he said, you can acquire personalty together with property. And so he told him to acquire that personalty as a payment for the loan. Now he can only do that to get the creditor, that it should go back to the creditor, if he testifies that it belongs to Levi, not it belongs to Yehuda. If it belongs to Yehuda, then it was never his. So maybe he actually had given this over. I gotta adjust something over here.
Did he steal from
It says Goiva. Kani Mekarkoi, Kani Metaltli, he acquires both. He would acquire the property, the realty, and acquire the personality. Now there is a slight issue over here, because when you do make a kinyan like that, you're saying that if I don't pay you, then this should be acquired to you. Well, that's sort of like a gamble. Maybe he's not really giving it over to him. So he has to write in the promissory note, he has to write, not like a gamble. Say the story, and not like just a template of a document. In other words, he has to say that this is a real sale, and it's not one of those gamble, one of those things that's made on this risk. Okay, so we're asking that maybe there is a problem of a bias even by personality. It says, we're talking about that when he bought this cow, he sold it immediately, and there was no debt that took place. There was no loan that he borrowed in between purchasing the cow and selling the cow. And that's why we know, you see, the only way that there would be a lien on the cow would be if he owned the cow and then he borrowed money. But if he had sold the cow already and then he borrowed money, or if he had borrowed money before he purchased the cow, and then he purchases the cow and then he sells it, so then it was never there at the time of the loan, so then there's no lien on the cow. So the way we're getting out of this, how do we make sure that there's no lien on the cow? We do this as we say that when he purchased the cow, him selling it was right away. He flipped it. He bought it and he sold it right away.
What if he didn't make a kinyan? He didn't pull something or pick something up?
Then he never would have acquired it. Yeah,
but that's what we do all the time now. All the transactions
yeah, it's with the kinyan. But that's click here. They say first click that you've read all the fine print and that you're not a robot. And then they say, okay, now click here and do not scroll, do not go back because you'll end up paying twice.
That's a contract, so you can't make a
on realty, you can make a kinyan. You can't do that for personality. Personality is you have to actually
You
lift
buy
it
an
up. Or
asset
something.
Cross country.
You
Say,
have to-
click here and do that.
So that you do with the sudar. That you do it. It would be well. I guess modern kinyanim work also. That's the way it's acquired nowadays, and that's considered.
I'm getting a little confused here, but it seems to me that if he's offering up this personality as a mashkanta,
Yeah.
you don't need a Kenyan, right? I've been kind of wondering all along, if
Problem
somebody
is-
pledges this as a collateral for a loan, if that's the case here.
Yeah, if it would just be, you see, he's not actually giving it to him. He's only giving it to him at the time when it's collection time. It's not collection time yet. It's just at the beginning when he's taking the loan, he's saying, if I don't pay up, then this item should be yours. And one of the ways of doing it, if he does it a regular kinyan with the sudar, he says, lift this up, then you can't make a kinyan like that it should be acquired later on at collection time. The only way to do that is with karka. I'm not sure exactly how it works, but the Rashbam says,
But under that analysis, he could then go and sell what he pledged before the loan is due.
yeah. However, what he's doing over here is the same way that I can sell realty and personalty, and the acquisition of the realty acquires the personalty. I can also sell not the personalty itself, but the shibud of the lien on the personalty that I can transfer together with karka. I can actually transfer a lien with what we're doing is it's not transferring the item. He's transferring the lien of the item. He's creating a shibud on personalty. That's the so. Maybe he did that. So he said, no, we can't. We answer that he couldn't have done that because he purchased the personalty and he sold it immediately. And there was no loan that took place in between purchasing it. Okay. Now the Gemara has a question that maybe he said that when I acquire that cow, he says, any items that I own or that I will own, I'm being mashabed to you. The Gemara says, well,
Like
obviously, what we're gonna, like it says in the Ksuba, the isli, the asad, the mikne, the asad and all the mikne that I own and that I will own in the future should all be indebted, mortgaged to this. The Gemara says, Shamet Mina, we're going to see from this, the Ikni Kana Umachar Kana Vahir, the Ikni Kana, it should be the Kana Umachar Kana Vahir, Slamish Stabit. It must be that it doesn't work. Now, we had a discussion, there is a discussion later on, if someone is able to do this. Now, according to what we're learning here, obviously he can't do it because we're saying that there's absolutely no bias if the person to testify about the original owner of personalty, to testify that it belongs to the purchaser. And we have no concern that a creditor is going to come in and extract it because the creditor can't extract it. So, well, maybe he could. Maybe he put a mortgage on it, he put a lien on it, that it should be indebted to him. So the Gemara is saying, well, how did he do that? So maybe he said anything that I will acquire. Gemara says, well, the fact that we see here that there's no bias must mean that anything that I will acquire doesn't work, doesn't get indebted. Gemara says, like tricha, no. The problem with it not working, it becomes a question. Because why later on do we have a discussion if it works or it doesn't work? We have an answer from here that it doesn't work. So the Gemara says, like tricha the kamri edim yadinan be behaid lehav le'ar mi'olam. The only way that he would be able to sell a lien, be able to create the lien on personalty, would be if he had realty. And we have witnesses that are telling us that Shimon never had realty. He only had a cow. He never owned realty, and he sold the cow to Levi, and he also borrowed money, but he was never able to transfer a lien of the cow over to the creditor because he never had property to be able to do it alongside. So, Vamar Rav Papa says, even though the sages said that if someone sells a field to his friend, and a creditor comes and takes it away, if he didn't take responsibility, this is a concept of shlei b'achrayas. He doesn't guarantee the field. That means there's no title insurance, and then it gets taken away by a creditor, so he can't go back and get his money. However, nimtza sheina shalai, Reb Naftali, we mentioned this before, but if it turns out that it's not actually his, that's a different story. Then chayzer elav, then he can come back then. So even though you're saying, it's a huge problem over here, because you're saying, oh, that this personality is not guaranteed, and it's not this. It can't be used as a collection. The problem is that I have someone else that's coming in, Yehuda, that's saying that he owns it. And if it's going to belong to Yehuda, then for sure Levi is going to come back to Shimon and say that you owe me money. You sold me something that wasn't yours. He sold him a young cow or a young donkey. I don't know why it switched up. We're talking about a cow before. It says that Levi is admitting that I know that this is yours. And what Yehuda's doing, how's he coming in and taking it away? He must have false witnesses. But because Levi's admitting that he knows he's buying it from Shimon, even though it's now in court, doesn't belong to him, but Levi knows that it belongs to Shimon because he said, I saw it being born. I was there at the birth. I know that this cow belonged to Shimon and it gave birth to this baby cow. So I know that. So therefore, Levi is never going to be able to go back to Shimon to get his money, because both Levi and Shimon know that however Yehuda extracted it, however Yehuda got it away, was all with falsehood. Levi admits to that. Levi has no claim on Shimon saying, I can't believe you sold this to me, and you know it's not yours. He can't say that because Levi said that it is his. Or maybe he could say that even if it ends up by Yehuda, he says, look, I sold it to you in such a way that you could never come back to me and say that it wasn't a good sale, because I took zero responsibility. If it's possible to make such a case, then that would also be a way out.
If he just says nothing, he takes, that's the case, right?
Yeah, the problem
if he just says nothing, there's no akrayas.
No, but not if Yehuda comes in and says that, Levi, you poor thing, you bought you bought a cow from Shimon, but it didn't belong to Shimon, it really belonged to me. So in normal cases, Levi would be able to go to Shimon and say, Shimon, you sold me something that's not yours. Unless they made up that he says, look, I'm selling it to you with absolutely no guarantee at all. All sales are final. Yeah, like that auction. Okay. Have a good day, everyone.